Season 1 of the first Descendant has released with a new spin on content known as Invasion Dungeons. Now, you would assume new content coming out alongside a new season would be a good thing. However, in the case of the Invasion Dungeons, there's been a lot of talk, controversy, and might I say drama surrounding this new content. So much so that within the first week of the season dropping, the devs already made what I would consider an emergency patch and update to the Invasion Dungeons, changing them from their original state. Regardless of your stance on the topic, I'm here today to talk to you about what I believe is the real problem with the Invasion Dungeons. Also, quickly, before we get started, I am happy to announce I now officially have a creator code. If you guys would like to support us with your in-game purchases, be sure to add us as your creator, and you can indirectly support us through your own in-game purchases at no extra cost. Link will be in the description below as well for a quick redirect for you guys to click to be able to link that down there. I thank any of you guys ahead of time for using my creator code, and we're going to keep the content rolling for you. Much love. There are two camps of players when it comes to the controversy and drama within the whole invasion content in the game. Some players are in the camp of content too hard. Some players believe content too easy. Some aren't even talking about difficulty. Some players are fixated on the mechanics inside of the invasion dungeons. Some people think the mechanics are bad. Some people might think that the mechanics are a good thing, and they add more engaging experience to the content. Regardless of if you think the invasion dungeons are easy, hard, good mechanics, bad mechanics, there is a more overarching problem with this content as the flagship season 1 gameplay loop. Imagine you're a player who maybe hopped into the first Descendant at launch and enjoyed yourself a little bit of time with the game, but didn't play it too much. It didn't quite grab you. You know, maybe pre-season you were busy or whatever, had stuff going on. And then you get an advertisement. Season 1 is officially beginning in the first Descendant. You see that and you're like, hey, I'll give the game another shot. You see the gameplay reveal trailer. You see these invasion dungeons. The trailer polishes it up, makes it look pretty cool, engaging, exciting. And then you go and try them out. And as a player who is coming back into the game and sort of getting back into it for maybe the first or second time, maybe you don't have too many hours in there. Maybe you saw season 1 as the real beginning opportunity of the game. Felt like preseason didn't have enough going on for yourself. So it's time to hop back and roll it. So all this content that you saw advertised and showcased inside of these trailers, obviously you want to engage with it. It's the season 1 stuff. It's the new content. You want to dive right in and experience what the new exciting stuff is going on in the first Descendant. Now, this is where the spectrum of difficulty controversy arises within the invasion dungeons. So a lot of players think that they were already too easy and that people are complaining that they are too hard, that their builds are bad, etc. None of that really matters when the real issue lies within where the devs attempted to approach more aspirational content in the game. As I was saying before, imagine being a more casual player who wants to hop in and check out season 1 after not playing too much. These invasion dungeons came out and they posed probably the largest threat of content in the game outside of Colossus battles. Maybe you could say this is a good thing because new content, now all of us that have been grinding the game really hard have something to use our fancy builds on. But being the main flagship content that is being put into the game alongside the launch of season 1, it is a horrible idea to try and use the new content that you want to show off to everybody as the newest aspirational, highest tier difficulty content in the game. You were specifically advertising this as the new stuff to come and play, and that needs to be accessible content. Seasonal content needs to be accessible. If you're going to be showcasing this and throwing it out there, making it all flashy inside of the trailers, everybody needs to be able to experience it and not get frustrated and bash their head against a wall and claim to want to quit the game entirely over this. I believe that there should have been a normal mode and then maybe a hard mode version of the invasion dungeons. That way say there is a tier of the new seasonal content that everybody could gain access to. Obviously, between normal and hard, awards could be adjusted to make hard more justified, but there does need to be that normal mode, or they could have just made a lesser difficult overall variant of this content that it was just a baseline that everybody could do. Now, I'm not saying that it's a good thing that this was some of the hardest content we had and all of a sudden it gets dialed back. You can now easily get gold scores with like half the time remaining. Before, the gold rewards felt like you had to lock in and really push your build to the limit to get it done, but now you can kind of lollygag along in there and sort of effortlessly get this gold reward time, which previously it felt exciting, it felt satisfying to reach the gold reward, but now it just kind of feels eh. Now, I don't think the retuning was a bad thing. They changed a lot of the mechanics up, and the mechanics are definitely a lot better than they were. There's a lot of jankiness, you might call it, to the mechanics. A lot of weird things that were sort of nitpicky, but very valid nitpicks when it comes to the way they designed all the mechanics for the invasion dungeons. There were plates that you had to stand on for a long time, and there was all kinds of colorblind issues with this because it was a color-specific puzzle. There are these tower things you have to shoot, but then you have to like go out of your way to get around the right side of them to shoot them, and that like artificially boosts the timer because it takes you longer to get to the right angle to shoot them, and then there's decoys and all this stuff, yada yada yada. So overall, the change to the mechanics was a positive thing. What the devs really should have done with this season: keep the new content accessible to all players. New seasonal content needs to be playable by a majority of your player base. While I agree that we need more aspirational content in the game, the invasion dungeons were not the place for the devs to approach this and make it the most difficult content that we've seen in the game when it comes to something that aren't the progression of Colossi battles. The right place to approach new difficulty should have been the new tier of hard mode infiltration ops we're getting, whether you want to call it tier 3 or extreme difficulty or ultra hard, whatever they're going to call it. This is where the devs should have began with approaching a new tier of difficulty in the game. Take content that is static in the game, locked in, and create a new tier there. We don't know if this content is limited, but these season 1 invasions, based on other games that have seasons, sometimes the content is known to be taken out eventually after seasons are over. I don't know if the devs intend to do that or if the invasion dungeons are here to stay long term in the game. The fact that we don't know that or not, this could sort of change thoughts on this going forward. But whenever you add a new piece of content, there should be some level of accessibility to the majority of the players for it, so that everybody can feel included in what's new and what's going on in the game. Now, with this new third tier of infiltration ops, this is the correct place that the whole invasion dungeon idea should have been implemented, with the higher health pools on the bosses, the aggression and density of all of the ads in the missions, the complexity of some of the mechanics. I wouldn't say they're exactly complex. The complexity of these mechanics were more so not the greatest design. Like I said, a lot of things have been cleaned up, but as new content rolls into the game, if it's what's being advertised and shown off to the general public, that needs to be very accessible to make these players come in and feel like they are welcomed in the universe of this game, like they can keep up, because that is how you're going to grow the player base long term. Not everybody picks up the game day one. Not everybody continues to play the game as hard as some of us do regularly. I'm sure there's people who played through the story of this game and put it down after that. Maybe some players just like to progress through the boss, and when they beat the final Colossus boss, that is their end game completion goal. But no matter who you are in this game, whenever new stuff is being advertised, advertisements are supposed to draw in a player base, an audience. That audience needs to be able to interact and be able to have some level or form of success or enjoyment with the product they were advertised. Using the advertised content and making it inaccessible to the many is going to be bad in the long term for future growth of this community. And the last thing I want to see is the community start to dwindle away rather than grow. This game has a a massive potential of a foundation here, especially for a free-to-play game. I'd say the baseline of what we have in this game is even better by a long shot than some of the full retail $70 plus games that come out there that claim to be AAA experiences. A free-to-play looter shooter thriving in 2024. Not to mention the devs' extensive dedication to fixing things that are wrong or don't feel right, that are pain points within the community. These developers are going incredibly hard in this game. I truly do see the passion that they have for the project that is the first Descendant. Now, when it comes to the part 2 update of season 1, obviously a new boss is coming along, and the boss is advertised as a big, bad, scary. The big, bad, scary, now it's all right if that's not as accessible to the general population, but you cannot suffocate them out of the game entirely. There needs to be something they can engage in and feel welcomed when it comes to new seasonal stuff. So it makes sense, well, it would have made sense for the invasion dungeons to come out first as a decent experience for everyone, and the boss to come out a little bit later on as the more aspirational content for more of us grinders. I do like the setup and the system the Colossi give in here. They are a progression system in the game. Obviously, there's been some shortcomings in the development of certain things that allowed specific builds and characters to do things they weren't supposed to do to get through bosses, which may have led to people progressing farther than they probably should have, and making the end game matchmaking for some bosses not what it should be. The whole idea of the boss progression is to prove that somebody is ready to take on the next challenge. But that's a discussion for another day. This is the discussion now. Going forward, seasonal content coming out alongside at least the first update of a season. It looks like we may get a main update for each new season and then a mid-season update, which I don't mind. However, this season 1 part 1 update ended up a little bit light, I think, due to the previous release schedule the devs intended on, which was 3 parts of a release, monthly releases for the content. Here we are with the month 1 content released as intended, but now parts 2 and 3 are getting bumped together, so it's going to be a bigger chunk of content all at once, and we got a little bit less content as the part 1 update than I think we would going into the future. If they plan season 2 to be a main season update and a mid-season update, I'm sure they would pull forward a little bit of the content they planned for like the mid-season or the part 2 update and bring it into the part 1 update. Anyhow, this is just my thoughts on what I believe should be the approach to adding more aspirational content going forward in the first Descendant, and the way seasonal content should be treated to ensure that this game can continue to consistently grow into a thriving, flourishing community and not slowly dwindle away to people being too overly frustrated with things that they were originally hopeful for, but then get beat down for when it comes to trying it out in the game. Let me know your guys' thoughts in the comments down below on how you think the seasonal content should be handled, whether you think that how it currently is decent, whether you think it's bad right now, what changes you would make or like to see going forward into future seasons for the first Descendant. Thanks for sticking around for my thoughts. Stay grinding, and I will catch you guys in a future video.